The story of indigenous peoples in America is a deeply rich and multifaceted narrative that spans thousands of years. This encompasses the accomplishments, traditions, resilience, and significant challenges arising from colonization and systemic oppression. It is believed that indigenous peoples migrated to the Americas more than 15,000 years ago, although numerous tribal origin stories claim they originated in these territories. They developed hundreds of distinct cultures, languages, and social systems across the Americas. Advanced civilizations like the Maya, Aztec, and Inca thrived in Central and South America, while the Mississippian mound builders, ancestral Puebloans, and Iroquois Confederacy made significant cultural and political advancements in North America. Indigenous peoples had spiritual, economic, and cultural ties to the land, which they managed sustainably through practices like controlled burning, crop rotation, and aquaculture. Christopher Columbus's arrival in 1492 marked the beginning of sustained European colonization. Initial encounters included trade and cultural exchanges, but quickly escalated to violence, exploitation, and diseases. Diseases like smallpox, measles, and influenza decimated indigenous populations, with mortality rates as high as 90% in some areas. As European settlers expanded, indigenous peoples faced violent conflicts, forced removal from their lands, and efforts to assimilate them into European ways of life. The U.S. government justified westward expansion as a divine right, displacing indigenous peoples through war, treaties, and forced removal. The Indian Removal Act, 1830, led to the Trail of Tears, where thousands of Cherokee, Muskogee, and other tribes were forcibly relocated to lands west of the Mississippi River. Indigenous lands were reduced to reservations, often on infertile or isolated terrain. Policies like the Dawes Act, 1887, aimed to dissolve tribal landholdings and promote assimilation. Boarding schools sought to erase indigenous identities by forbidding the use of native languages and traditions. Leaders like Tecumseh, Sitting Bull, and Geronimo resisted colonization and fought to preserve their people's ways of life. Key conflicts include the Battle of Little Bighorn, 1876, and the Wounded Knee Massacre, 1890. The American Indian Movement, AM, founded in the 1960s, fought for treaty rights, land reclamation, and cultural preservation. Indigenous leaders worked to secure federal recognition of tribal sovereignty and self-determination. There has been a resurgence of indigenous languages, traditions, and spiritual practices. Indigenous artists, writers, and scholars have gained greater visibility, sharing their stories and perspectives. Many tribes now operate as sovereign nations within the United States, managing their own governments, schools, and businesses. Economic development, often through industries like gaming and tourism, has supported some tribes, though systemic challenges remain. Indigenous communities face systemic issues, including poverty, health disparities, and environmental threats. Disputes over land and resources persist, exemplified by the Standing Rock demonstrations opposing the Dakota Access Pipeline in 2016. Indigenous leaders champion the causes of environmental protection, cultural preservation, and justice. The acknowledgement of Indigenous Peoples Day and the heightened initiatives to celebrate Indigenous contributions signify advancements in promoting awareness. Indigenous knowledge has shaped agriculture, medicine, governance, and environmental stewardship globally. Ideas like the Iroquois Confederacy's governance system influenced the U.S. Constitution. The story of Indigenous peoples in America is one of survival, adaptation, and resilience. Despite centuries of colonization, they continue to preserve their cultures, assert their sovereignty, and contribute to the broader fabric of society. Their history is not just one of the past, but a living legacy of endurance, wisdom, and strength.